What's up, Rangers fans? Welcome back to the channel, and we are just one day away from seeing the Rangers finally back in the Garden against the New York Islanders tomorrow night for the home opener at 7 p.m. Eastern time. I am pumped. I'll be live streaming during that game as well, so Rangers fans, stay tuned for that. Make sure to chime in and do a little bit of a Q&A with me as I do some play-by-play reaction and just share my genuine thoughts throughout the game, all the highs and the lows that inevitably are going to be coming in that home openers. But I hope to see you guys there tomorrow. But today is a fitting time to get started with our new segment, our new series here on the channel, which is Rangers Review. It'll be myself alongside Statboy Steven. All you Ranger fans know him by now, but we're going to be taking a look at the Rangers and really everything leading up to tomorrow night's game, how we think they're going to fare, how we think the lineup is going to shake out now that the active roster has been released, our thoughts on the guys that did make the roster and didn't make the roster to an extent, and everything in between. So as always, guys, make sure you stay all the way until the end of the video, find out all of our thoughts on the Rangers and their upcoming home opener against the Islanders. And if you end up enjoying this kind of Ranger content and want to see more great Ranger content like this, you know what to do by now. Make sure you smash that like and subscribe button, share this video with your friends, put on the notification bell, all those great things. It would really mean a lot, guys. Thank you all so much for 3,000 subscribers. It means the world to me. Now let's get a 4K. I know we'll get there sooner than later because this thing is soaring and I'm just enjoying every single second of it, and I have all of you to thank. So seriously, thank you all again, guys. But enough of me talking. Let's get right into this video. All right, guys, Steven, thank you so much for coming back. It means a lot. I was really looking forward to this. As you know by now, I changed my channel a little bit, rebrand, where I want to focus more on the New York Rangers just because that's something that I feel that I'm most comfortable with at this point in time, and I really think it'll help really build this channel. And nothing better now to have our own segment here that we will be doing weekly called Rangers Review. That'll be a work in progress. The logo you might see change among some other things. But Steven, how are you today? And once again, thank you for being a part of this. I'm really looking forward to what's ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I'm doing good. You know, I think everyone's getting excited for the start of the new NHL season. 2021 is here. The worst year in living memory is behind us, I guess, 2020. So, yeah, let's hope things look up from here. And yeah, I think everyone's excited with 116 consecutive days of NHL hockey coming up.
Yeah, you can't complain. Like tomorrow, I'm just ecstatic. By the time this video out, will be to Wednesday, which is the first day of hockey. I'll probably be watching numerous games, probably some games where teams I wouldn't normally follow as much, but you just want to do that when hockey's back. Any game on, you just have to flip it on. But I'm really excited for the season. I'm sure you are too. It kind of feels like, in a sense, that while things really dragged out in 2020, for whatever reason, in my personal opinion, it felt like Rangers hockey wasn't too far away. Even with them getting swept in the qualifying round and everything, it just, I don't know. I guess because it's a shortened season and things are a little different now, it doesn't feel like Ranger hockey ended all that long ago, but in reality, it did.
Yeah, and I think the big difference is also the way the season progressed, like the dates that were moved up. The draft was in October. And then you go from, you know, drafting Lafreniere first overall and Braden Schneider 19th overall to a couple of weeks later, people are already talking about World Juniors. You know, there was this talk about Lafreniere going to Team Canada or not, and then he didn't. And then Canadians were upset. And then Kirby Dach actually decided to go, and he broke his arm or wrist. So there was always something to talk about when it came to you know, hockey on Twitter. Whereas in a normal year, the season ends in June. You have to draft in June, and then you have 1 or 2 days of free agency in early July, and then you have the whole month of July, the whole month of August, and basically the first 2-3 weeks of September when there's nothing to talk about. So yeah, it was a little bit different, but yeah, I'm just happy to have hockey back and. Looking forward to seeing Lafreniere in the Rangers jersey, definitely.
Oh, me too. Yeah, I don't have it beside me right now, but I do have a Lafreniere shirt see finally, and I have a jersey on the way. Shout out to my girlfriend. It should be here around February, hopefully. I know you already have a plethora, so I'm not even going to ask you. But no, a couple goodies I want to show you before we get into this video, just from the holidays and really over the past couple days, because I've been doing digging in my basement, and we actually came across some nice Ranger gems. But to start off gift-wise, one of them, I got numerous Ranger things, but this one, just because I have it on my desk, is a Wayne Gretzky Rangers bobblehead. Want to show you. I thought that was pretty neat. And it's actually number 2, and it's out of 36 out of 72, which I didn't even realize that it was like that limited. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then while doing digging in my basement, we found this Rangers puck that's from the 90s. So that one I think is really cool. I think it's from late 90s, this one. And then we also got here Rangers Cup from 1994 from the Stanley Cup Finals, obviously, and even has like icy in it where you would freeze it in the freezer so you don't have to have ice in it. I thought that was pretty neat. Oh yeah, I'm an idiot. You can't even see these things I'm showing you right now. I'll show you it after this thing then. But regardless, I'm going to just show it to everyone watching here. And then I also have this other mug that's a it's like the old Western Conference and Eastern Conference mug back in 1995. So you have the Northeast Division on it, which I think is pretty cool. You have the Hartford Whalers still in there. And then if you look on, you have the Central and the Pacific. The Mighty Ducks of Anaheim are still in it, among some others. That's pretty cool. And then the last thing I'm showing, I'll show you this after the fact when we're actually able to see me, is it's a Grateful Dead New York Rangers shirt with the Statue of Liberty logo in it. And then at the bottom it says, "I steal your pucks." My dad found that today. I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, I know you're probably like, it doesn't matter, I can't see anything right now. So for everyone watching, at least you see it. But I'll show you it after the fact. But I thought those were pretty cool. But getting on to now, basically what has happened. Luckily, right before we started recording here, the active roster was just released for the Rangers to start the season. And probably the most notable thing that I touched on in my previous video here on the channel is K'Andre Miller. What a start he had. He really blossomed through camp and was eye-opening, really jaw-dropping to a lot of people, especially David Quinn, comparing him to a praying mantis at one point just because of his type of play style. I thought it was kind of funny. It made me think of Matt Zuccarello being compared to a lizard when he was first signed by the Minnesota Wild and their GM before he was eventually thrown away, fired. But what are your thoughts on K'Andre making this roster in this lineup in particular?
Of course, I'm thrilled that he made the team, but it is a bit of a surprise for me. And nothing against K'Andre Miller, but when you look at the NHL and you look at the history of defensemen and at what stage of their career they usually make it to the NHL, you have basically two groups of defensemen. You have the absolute top picks like Aaron Ekblad, Rasmus Dahlin, Miro Heiskanen, Kyle McCarr, Quinn Hughes. They usually make either straight out of the draft the team or in a year or two. And then you have other players like Roman Josi, Matthias Ekholm, Keith Yandel, Shea Weber, like the guys that are picked outside of the top 10, basically. And I think even Erik Karlsson, who usually need a little bit longer. And guys like Josi and Weber and Ekholm, they're really good defensemen, but they only became NHL regulars about 3 to 4 years after they were drafted. So my expectation for Miller was sort of the same, that he needed some time in the AHL, but he has surprised everyone. And everyone should be excited. And I've said several times, for the Rangers to win the playoffs, we need several things to go our way, because last season we have 5 teams in our division right now who were better than us last season. They're set up for the bait. They finished higher in the standings. They have more experience. So for the Rangers to finish top 4 in their division, they need either 2 of those teams to fall off or for the Rangers to improve. And the Rangers last season already had Panarin, Zibanejad, and DeAngelo putting up career seasons. So you need at least 2 out of those 3 to replicate that, plus other players to step up for the team to even improve. And K'Andre Miller, if he can actually make an impact from the start, that's going to go a long way towards the Rangers being contenders for a playoff spot.
No, exactly. And I was really blown away to see K'Andre not just having an average camp from what it seemed, but really standing out to everyone, looking like one of the best players throughout the entire thing. When he was asked through his media just this past day or so, how's he feeling? He says that this is by far the most confident he's been with the Rangers versus when he was with the team leading up to the qualifying round against the Hurricanes and before. It just feels like he's at an all-time high right now in his career. I think it's boding well between his time with Alexi Lafreniere. As we know, they've been roommating. I think that they have definitely been gelling, and that has been helping their game, especially with Lafreniere adjusting with the Rangers. And also Miller, it doesn't get much better when it comes to practicing every day with a prospect as coveted as a guy like Alexi Lafreniere. So I'm loving every aspect of that. And I think K'Andre, knowing that he very well is going to be starting opening night alongside Jacob Trouba, is very enticing, if you ask me. And for the most part, this lineup is not that different than last year. I think it just gets better. But if you want to get right into it, here we have basically the only real differences here is when you look at the bottom pair. Well, I shouldn't even go there. Before I go there, I'll just say Capo Caco now, as we know, is going to be on that second line, most likely with Strome and Panarin. What are your thoughts on Capo, and what do you kind of expect out of him now that he has solidified himself in this top six?
Well, to start off, I usually refer to the Panarin line as the first line because I rank the lines based on the players on it, and Panarin led the team in points. So for me, that's the first line. But the lines we have, the Zibanejad and Panarin line, they're interchangeable. Let's refer to them as top six lines. But Kako being put on that line, replacing Jesper Fast, who of course signed with the Carolina Hurricanes, I think we'll see him have a better season than last year. Of course, we saw him coming back from Finland for the qualifying round against those same Carolina Hurricanes, where he already looked much better than he did in the regular season. And I've drawn parallels between Kako and Tyler Seguin, actually, where in the regular season they weren't really that great, but later on in the season you could see that they were more comfortable. And yeah, Kako with a fresh start, having had months to just practice and get into shape instead of flying transatlantic 7 times in the span of 2 months. He didn't have to do that this year. I think that would definitely help his performance. So yeah, seeing Kako on that line with Panarin is exciting. I think Strome and Panarin work well together. Some fans really don't like Ryan Strome, but he signs for, I think, less than $5 million a year on average. If he can play with Panarin and be on pace for like 0.8 points per game over the season, I think that's really good value for a center that isn't even making 5.5 or 6 million. And Strome's situation is very similar to Derek Brassard in 2014 when he came his contract and he signed for $5 million a year. I think Strome's situation is very similar in terms of what he's worth to the team, and he might not be a long-term. He might not have a long-term role on this team, but this season going forward with Panarin and Kako, him centering those two, I'm very excited about seeing what Kako can do on that line.
No, I completely agree with you there, because to see him now alongside Panarin as well, I don't think it gets much better than that. Capo, you can tell, one, I love the fact that his English is better too from all the interviews I've seen of him since coming back. You can clearly tell that he's developing it, had a very strong offseason as it is, but having this time off, as you already alluded to, he looks stronger on the puck. I really liked from what I saw in just the clips and everything that I read about him in this offseason in the training camp. And now him along the side with Strome and Panarin, I think is going to be such an upgrade now, because when you look at just last season, that second line, or in your mind at least first line, with having Fast there, Fast definitely helped the line defensively speaking, but offensively there was never a whole lot there, nor would you have expected it with a guy like Fast. He's just really a glue guy. Doesn't matter where you put him in the lineup, he's going to not make that line worse. If anything, he's going to make it better. Now you bring Capo, and there's so much offensive upside here that can make this Rangers top six as it is dominant. And then you have Pavel Buchnevich too, which I may very well do an individual video about as well, because when David Quinn was asked who he believes is going to have a breakout year out of this roster, he first talked about Pavel Buchnevich, and I found that very interesting, because as we know, Buch is a guy that he's had some highs, he's had some lows with this Rangers team, has played above and below expectations at times. When it comes to his overall two-way game, it's looked really strong. Analytically speaking, he's really been doing better these past couple years, and has been one of the Rangers' best two-way forwards actually the past couple years as well. So what are your thoughts on Buchnevich, and really Quinn's thoughts as to if there's going to be a breakout player this upcoming year? He's looking no further than Buch.
Yeah, for Buchnevich, I think at this moment is still our best right winger until Kako overtakes him. Mm-hmm. And Buchnevich he's born in 95. He's only 26, turning 26 this year. He's still very young. And I think we sometimes forget how young Buchnevich is, because he has been on the team longer than a lot of these other players. Of course, we have Kreider, who's been on the team since 2012. But after that, it's basically Zibanejad and Buchnevich who are the longest-serving Rangers on this team, the longest tenured. So that somehow makes people think that he's older than he actually is. But at 25, he is entering his prime. What we have seen so far is hopefully leading up to him taking one more step and becoming. He's already a solid top six winger, but maybe he can become a top line winger. And I think Buchnevich over the last 2 years under Quinn has developed as a player in areas that you don't really see on the ice during games. But
Correct.
he added a little bit of snarl to his game. He's more composed. Looking at Buchnevich now and looking at Buchnevich 2-3 years ago, it's night and day.
I was just going to say that.
I'm excited to see what happens. And of course, he's on the line with Zibanejad and Kreider, the KZB line, which has worked for about 2-3 years now. And, they really gel well together. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. If there's one weakness the Rangers have among their forward core, it's probably that they don't really have any outstanding two-way forwards in their top 9.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about Strome on the Panarin line, and you have Zibanejad centering Kreider and Buchnevich. And I'm not saying that they're bad defensively, but I mean they are not like your prototypical two-way centers where
they're no Selke winners.
Exactly, and of course over the summer there were some rumors about the Rangers maybe going after Philip Deneau
or Cirelli.
Or Cirelli. Well, Cirelli was never going to leave Tampa.
I know that seemed more like a pipe dream.
It's just the offer sheet fantasy that happens every summer, and it almost never happens. Sebastian Aho was the first offer sheet in I think 7 years. So.
Yeah, I know. Mm-hmm.
But Philip Deneau, I think, would have been an interesting trade target for the Rangers, and if the Rangers do want to go for an upgrade at center, I think they would go for a guy that adds some stellar defense as well, because that is something the Rangers seem to be missing. Although that third line is very exciting, and we'll probably get into that next.
Oh, yeah. No, that third line I think could very well take up this entire show. It won't, but there's so many things to be excited about because before we get on to that third line, just to grasp a little bit more in regards to defensive forwards, you're right. And that is going to be something that the Rangers will absolutely be tested with in this upcoming season, still being that inexperienced team with lacking some defensive depth, both on the offensive and defensive side of things. Mika Zibanejad is a guy that we've seen on the PK, but is normally not a guy that you want to see on the PK per se when he's your star centerman and is still very much in his prime. Chris Kreider has looked solid at times defensively, but these are not guys that you're banking on a nightly basis to the point where they're going to be Rick Nash, if you will, because as we know, when Nash came to the Rangers, his game just kind of completely changed from when Babcock started using him on the PK, playing for Team Canada in the Olympics. So outside of that, the Rangers haven't had a lot of great defensively minded forwards outside of Fast. So it's going to be key for them to see how much they're going to be able to rebound losing a guy of Fast's caliber because of just how much of a role he had, not just as, personality and person in the locker room, but mainly his defensive game. And that third line is really going to be a huge question mark as well, because while defensively it's not looking sound, it's not looking sound on paper by any stretch of the imagination, but is nothing short of exciting. And as we talked about previously, how yes, there's some worry there with the Rangers really put in some risk where their third line, the oldest guy there is Julien Gauthier at 23 years of age. Well, that's exactly what they're doing. So we're going to have the Laugh, the Hedel, and the Gauthier line. So what are your thoughts initially on that when that first came out, and now that is coming to fruition? What are your expectations as soon as opening night for this Rangers team with them?
I kind of expected those three to be on the third line, even though I probably wouldn't have gone this way.
I agree.
I personally, looking at your three young star players, your young star forwards in Lafreniere, Kakko, and Hedel, I would have preferred to have those three on three separate lines. So either have Kreider on the third line, or maybe move Lafreniere to the right side and have Buchnevich on the left. They are interchangeable. They are both comfortable playing on their off wing. But it would have given you the spread of your three young prospects in Kakko, Hedel, and Lafreniere, having all of them on a separate line. Having said that, the third line right now, it's probably the baby line, although I heard someone call it the French connection because of Lafreniere and Gauthier, which
that's true.
Or the French checking line because there's a check in the middle. We can spend the next 48 hours thinking of a proper name for that line, but it's an exciting line. We have Lafreniere, the first overall pick, starting on the third line. Might be a little bit disappointing for Ranger fans because normally when a player gets drafted first overall, you see him slot into the top six. But normally the first overall pick goes to a team that has been absolutely horrible. The Rangers have won two lotteries in a row where, and I looked it up, in 2019, pre-lottery, they had the ninth overall pick. And this year in 2020, they had the 11th or 12th overall pick. So they weren't as bad as teams usually are when they draft first overall. So Lafreniere on the third line, I mean, I'm not going to lose sleep over it, but because it could be a positive with the favorable matchups. But if Lafreniere is off to a hot start, I wouldn't be surprised if he moves up into the top six at the expense of either Kreider or Buchnevich. And I know Kreider may make $7 million a year, but I've said this before as well. The Pittsburgh Penguins won 2 Stanley Cups with Phil Kessel on their third line. What you need to win cups is depth, and having Kreider on your third line is what we need. We need depth, and I'm just excited to see what Lafreniere can do. He laid out a hit on Libor Hayek today in a scrimmage. Oh boy, that is something you don't really expect from a rookie. But it's just great to see that Lafreniere is already so comfortable. And I spoke to some people who have been close to him over the last couple of months because he lives in Connecticut now. He's with the same billet family that looked after Vitaly Kravtsov and Yegor Rykov last year. And, it's interesting to see that they put Lafreniere and Miller together and they gel so well. Mm-hmm. They hung out with Chris Kreider and Morgan Barron as well. So this young Rangers team, it's interesting to see Chris Kreider pop up every time Ranger prospects are hanging out. He's like the dad to these younger players, and
he really is.
And that's the type of leadership role you want from one of your top players. So I'm really happy to see that. I'm just excited. The Rangers finally have a first overall pick, and they have the first overall pick in a draft where. And I was talking to my girlfriend about this earlier. Lafreniere is in his draft class in a tier of his own.
Oh,
in 2017, you had Hischier and Nolan Patrick. They were going 1 and 2, but nobody knew which order. 2019, there was talk about Kakko going first overall, so Kakko and Hughes were in the same tier together. In 2018, you had Dahlin and Svechnikov, and there was some debate there. 2020, there was really no debate. It was Lafreniere and then everyone else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And adding a young player like Lafreniere, I mean, I'm pretty sure he's excited to play for the Rangers. There was some talk about, no, he's from Quebec, so he wants to play for the Canadiens. Yeah, James van Riemsdyk grew up a Rangers fan, and he's played for the Flyers most of his career. So when players actually get the opportunity to play pro hockey, they don't care what team they play for.
Yes, at least as long as you're not Adam Fox. That's the only exception. But outside of that, though, I think what is so great about Lafreniere, obviously, other than him just being an absolute stud, is that it does bring so much depth. When you look at these Rangers top 9 now, I think it's going to bring more incentive from Quinn's side of things to make sure that he's constantly rolling these lines fairly equally. The fourth line is going to be a different story where him. He doesn't play much of the fourth line. I hope that he plays it a little bit more now just because of how we look at the roster shaking up. Normally when the Rangers have had success, at least in my opinion, when you've seen in years prior, they normally are rolling the lines pretty evenly. The fourth line is obviously going to get the least amount of time, but when you exclude that line completely, then all havoc breaks loose. We all saw it last year when the Rangers, when they're, say, down by 2 goals in the third period, would say between 8 and 10 minutes left, Quinn's already trying to roll, keeping Panarin and Zibanejad together on the same line, having Panarin on his off wing, not playing the fourth line at all the third period, and they end up losing because these guys are getting gassed, and there isn't equal distribution, even if the fourth line wasn't playing great to begin with. So Lafreniere, I think, is going to bring that huge element to just knowing that that third line very well can put up production of a second line at some point. It might be from the get-go and it might be throughout the year. And with his production, what we expect him to be, which I think is going to be amazing. He's looked fantastic, if you ask me, in camp from everything. He just looks so confident. He looks smooth. He looks excited to be there. He looks like a little kid that is finally, going into his own final, and he's just enjoying every second of it. Him and Hedel look like that they have a great relationship. I expect Hedel to have a career year this year when it comes to points percentage-wise, because it's a short 56-game season. Gauthier, we're finally going to get to see what Gauthier is all about, and no better way to see him do that generally with younger guys as well, where maybe that could help him build his confidence, knowing that he has guys in fairly similar boats to him, but also Lafreniere with that connection, because Laf is obviously the best guy on that line right now, even with Hedel being in the league a couple years. So I'm really excited for that third line. I think that very well could help take the Rangers over the edge. And even if Laf really produces, I wouldn't be quick to assume that he moves up in the top 6 as long as he's getting an even amount of playing time between 5-on-5 and special teams. If that third line is really thriving, the Rangers are thriving, the last thing you want to do is kind of change it up. Even if he's deserving of, say, move it up, he would probably know at the end of the day that, hey, it's so we can really evenly play out these top 3 lines because of just how solid each and every one of them are.
Yeah, and look, the only thing I want is for Quinn to put Lafreniere in a position to succeed.
Same here.
We Ranger fans never had an opportunity like this to see a player of his caliber start his career with the Rangers. He is, in my opinion, more talented than Brian Leetch at the same age. Brian Leetch, of course, spent a year with Boston College. I think it's Boston College before making it to the NHL. But Lafreniere is the best player the Rangers ever drafted. Put him in a position to succeed. And there has been some Calder talk about Shesterkin and Lafreniere being the front runners together with Kirill Kaprizov of the Minnesota Wild. And if Lafreniere starts on the third line, I really hope that he gets an opportunity to show what he can do on a different line if he produces early on. We all saw that Quinn is a very stubborn coach when it comes to young players. He's not really the type of coach that puts young players in a position to succeed from the get-go. He wants them to, go through the motions, put in the hard work, this and that. But a player like Lafreniere, you just have to make exceptions. He's like no other prospect Quinn has ever worked with. And David Quinn worked with Jack Eichel in Boston. So yep. I think Lafreniere is a better prospect than Eichel was at the same age.
I agree with you there. And I think that's saying a lot at this point, you know what I mean? Because don't get me wrong, I love Jack Eichel. I would love him on the Rangers one day. Hopefully, maybe that comes to fruition, but time will tell. But when you look at just how Lafreniere was coveted going into his draft class and a guy like Eichel is great. I love the fact that Eichel also playing for BU as well. I think he's had a smooth transition, even with some of the injuries he's been enduring. He has been one of the best players in all of the NHL already, if you ask me, just when it comes to his overall game. But Lafreniere, what kind of separates him from the rest in just that, hypothetical argument per se, is that he was in a far deeper draft class when you look at things. Obviously taking out of McDavid's situation with Eichel, besides that, when you look at that entire draft class as a whole, the depth, there's a lot of expectation, a lot of reasoning to suggest that the 2020 class can very well go down as one of the best in a recent, if not long-term NHL history. So Lafreniere, there's a lot of reasons to be excited about him. We've been beating a dead horse at this point, but it's so refreshing knowing that the Rangers are finally in a position where they have a guy that can very well carry this team to the promised land, hopefully sooner rather than later. But getting on to the defense now, because obviously Keandre Miller, we're stoked about him. We're already touched on him, and we really think that Trouba pairing could very well put something. I would love to see it where Keandre not just solidifies himself to make the roster for the, to start out with Trouba, but actually play with the Rangers all season. If he's able to do that, then that is going to be huge. It's music to my ears. So we will see what happens on that front. But when you get on to the other lines, Ryan Lindgren and Adam Fox, I think we can all agree that line is probably just going to continue to thrive. They already have gelled well. Ryan Lindgren can continue to stay back, continue to be that hard-nosed, more stay-at-home defenseman, and really doing it flawlessly. There isn't a lot of things about his game that I do not like whatsoever, even at the point at him being so young at this point in time. Adam Fox, I think Foxy is going to have a better year than what he did in his rookie year. I know the sophomore slump is always a little thing to worry about, but I don't think that's going to happen with him. He's just so composed and so smooth. But that bottom pair is going to be the biggest question mark. and how long Tony DeAngelo possibly stays on that right side, regardless if it's going to be Jack Johnson or Brendan Smith. I think that's going to be a rotation, if you will, almost on a nightly basis, depending on how they perform, which very well can have an impact on DeAngelo's game per se, if there's some uncertainty on a night-to-night basis as to who he's paired with. So what's your initial thoughts on DeAngelo on that third pair, and do you think it's going to be a long-term thing throughout the season like it was last year, where they continue to give him power play time and kind of even distribution of playing time 5-on-5 so it's worthy of his contract? Or do you think you very well may see him pop in the left side along with Trouba, like we all assumed originally in that top 4 pair?
Well, I think DeAngelo's biggest strength is his production. And for that reason, you don't really want him on the top pair, because the top pair should be there to take the tough matchups against other teams' top lines. When you play the Penguins, you're playing against either Crosby or Malkin. When you play against the Florida Panthers, you're up against Barkov. So having Lindgren and Fox on the top pair, I completely understand that. Miller with Trouba is an interesting combination. Let's see how that goes. The only downside of that pairing is that they are not really defensively sound. They're
fairly similar.
They're very similar in the style of hockey they play. They're both transition defensemen. Yep. Trouba, of course, has a little bit of physicality to him. I think everyone still remembers the hit on Michael Del Cole against the Islanders last year. But in general, Jacob Trouba is a defenseman that is moving the puck. He's not your stay-at-home defenseman, or like Mark Stahl, or I would like to refer to Mark Stahl as a lost-at-home defenseman sometimes. But they're not really the defenseman that you keep in your own zone and it's extra lock on the door. So let's see how that goes. But yeah, it's an interesting time to see what we're going to do with the defense. We have some young guys coming up in the next year or two, in Zach Jones, Matt Robertson, Nils Lundqvist, and Braden Schneider. Of course, Tarmo Riunanen is now on the taxi squad, I think, or he's going to play in the AHL. We still have him. Who knows? Maybe they sign Hunter Skinner, who, of course, won a gold medal with Team USA at the World Juniors. So there's a lot of talent coming up, and I think DeAngelo is not going to be on this team for a long time, because they will just transition from him to a younger player, not because of who DeAngelo is as a player, but because of the salary cap. In this summer, we have Shesterkin coming off his entry-level deal. 2022, we have Kakko and Fox. 2023, we will have Lafreniere coming off his entry-level deal. We need to shed some salary here or there to make sure we can sign our top players. And those big four, Kakko, Lafreniere, Fox, and Shesterkin, I wouldn't be surprised if those four combined take up $30 million of the salary cap if they sign long-term deals.
I wouldn't be surprised either. And I think that's a great point too, because while we want to enjoy the moment right now, we also do need to keep in mind at least an awareness of, yes, we do have some serious young talent that will be having their contracts up within the coming years, some within the next year, and then others a couple years after that. So when it comes to DeAngelo's situation, it's interesting because, say what you will about him, and, we're not going to touch on anything in regards to, everything that happens with him as a person, because I'm not about that. I'm strictly about hockey here. So when it comes to DeAngelo, I would love to see him continue to be a blue shirt. I really enjoy his offensive game. He said how much he would hope to continue to work on his defensive game. That's something that he actually wants to work on the most this season, because he's tired of hearing people saying how poor he is defensively. I think that's great if that puts a fire under him to really try to take his game to another level, more as a two-way defenseman. Then sure, could it lower his stock a little bit, however, if it causes the offensive production to die down? It very well could. So DeAngelo is a guy where I think, unless he does have a stellar upcoming season, which he may very well do just that, unless he does that and has a significant strides, he, along with Strome, as we've been saying over the past plus year and a half, could very well be see being dealt, because of just how basically easy he is to be dealt, knowing that we have these young studs, and Nils Lundqvist most notably on the right side, and then with a plethora of lefties that are bound to hit the Rangers lineup in the coming years.
Yeah, and like with Buchnevich, DeAngelo is only 25. So there is still room for improvement. Entering his prime, like Buchnevich, who knows what we might see. I'm not saying that we should expect him to replicate his season and be top 5 in scoring among defensemen again, because I see some fans saying, "Oh, but he's still young; he's going to improve." Yes, it's possible, but it's not a guarantee. Some players just peak early. A prime example of that is Teemu Selanne, who set his career single season highs for goals and points in his rookie season, and he never came close to that ever again. He was 22 when he set those career highs.
Yep.
And not that Selanne was a bad player. I mean, he's one of the best players of the last 30 years. But he never. I think he had 76 goals in his rookie season, and his second highest after that was 51. Again, not bad, but he never came close to the numbers he hit at a young age. And for some players, it's just like that. Maybe last season for D'Angelo is the best we will ever see out of him.
Yeah, no, and you're not wrong. We could say the same thing about Strome as well. So it's going to be key years for both these guys. And, I think that they have a lot on their plate, obviously. They know, obviously, that they are in a situation where, yes, we are highly susceptible of being dealt with, especially Strome, because Gordon willingly said, yes, we were looking at some suitors around the draft, and something just did not come to fruition. So we know that for certain. At least D'Angelo, we have not seen any physical reports, I believe, of them shopping him, even though teams have shown interest in him, including Vegas, I'm pretty sure, among some others. But I think a fair comparison to D'Angelo's situation, should he be a quick bloomer, if you will, I hope he isn't, but a guy like Shane Gostisbehere comes to mind to me as well. Because Shane is a guy who, when he first came in the league, really looked great, offensively speaking, but the past couple of years between injuries, and while he's still young as well, he's still very much, I would say, in the prime of his career, but almost downhill from that peak. And with Alain Vigneault's strategy on how he utilizes him on other things, he's a guy that I'm not sure exactly what the future holds for him, but he looked dominant in the beginning. He was putting up some great numbers, was one of the best offensive-minded defensemen in the entire NHL, and now here he is struggling to have a significant role with the Flyers lineup.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens with D'Angelo, but he signed for 2 years, and in those 2 years, the Rangers will move to a situation where they have to move some salary, whether that's going to be Strome, D'Angelo, Buchnevich, or maybe 2 out of 3, or maybe all 3. We'll see. But this season, I think D'Angelo in a sheltered role on the third pair, if you give him power play time, I think you can still get amazing value out of him. And of course, the last few years, he was on a really cheap contract, and he has earned his raise. So yeah, let's see what happens. But I think for a lot of Ranger fans, what's going to be most exciting about this is something that you don't really notice on the ice. But assuming Brandon Smith is the 7th defenseman, the Rangers go into the season with an All-American blue line.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I didn't even think about that. That's awesome. That's actually really cool. Have they ever had that in their history?
I don't think so, no. So I would have to check, but as far as I know, there was always a Canadian on their defense. So this is probably the first time in franchise history they have an All-American blue line.
As long as Johnson's in the lineup, right? Because isn't Brendan Smith Canadian?
Yeah, if Brendan Smith is the 7th defenseman, which I think he will be to start the season.
That's cool though. I like that. I'm glad you realized that. That's actually pretty neat. So yeah, hopefully we'll see how these Americans do, right? Having them all stacked up against each other. But now that
they're playing in front of a Russian goalie tandem, which is also interesting.
I know, yeah. No, it's definitely been a Russian wave when it comes to the Rangers, as we know, and it's not done yet. Especially with Krasov still in the mix. Raykov's probably pushing at this point if he'll ever be with the Rangers, but Krasov, unless he gets dealt, he'll definitely be with the Rangers within the next year. But getting on to the tandem now, and we don't have to spend too much time just because we've already kind of explained everything what we expect with this tandem, but what are your initial thoughts on Igor? How are you feeling about him from what we saw in training camp? Same thing with Georgiev, because I thought he looked stellar. And do you think this tandem is going to be one where on a night-to-night basis, Quinn is basically going to evaluate who's going to be playing, because they very well both can be having the hot hand at significant times throughout the season?
I think this season we'll see a little bit of a shift in how teams use their goalies. And this,
for sure,
this comes from how teams were using their goalies in the playoffs last summer. When they were in the bubble in Toronto and Edmonton, you saw a couple of teams
And I enjoyed that.
that didn't really go with a starter and a backup, but they went with a tandem, a 1A, 1B type scenario. Like the Vegas Golden Knights had Fleury and Leonard start regular games for them. And of course, with COVID, we don't know what's going on. One infection could derail a team's entire season. But the Rangers in goal, they have two capable goalies. They're both they're around the same age. They're 23, 24. I think Shesterkin has a little bit more credit than Georgiev because he's just the more naturally talented goalie. He's a little bit flashier, but
bizarre, yes.
But Georgiev, I think as a backup, Georgiev is a really good player to have. And I feel much more confident going into the season with Shesterkin and Georgiev than if we would have gone into the season with Shesterkin and Kincaid in the scenario where we would have traded Georgiev for a second rounder or whatever.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I'm personally so in favor of tandems, might I add. It's really refreshing to see the NHL over the past couple of years finally adopt that, hey, we probably shouldn't be starting our guy for the majority of the season because, one, it just gets them gassed. It really can affect them come playoff time as well, and you want to have these guys fresh. And why not make the backup role not as much a backup role so you have some more even distribution of wealth in that sense when it comes to the goaltending? I'm sick and tired of seeing backups where they're basically fringe NHL goaltenders, that they're just there because they know that they're going to get a cup of coffee throughout the season. It's so nice for the Rangers case because while there was a lot of talk with Georgiev being dealt, I'm so happy the Rangers didn't deal him at the same time because, yes, you might get a couple second round picks or whatever it's going to be for him, but reality is that going to be that much of an upgrade for a guy Georgiev who, yes, I know goalies are, they're a revolving door. You can find a great new gem of a goaltender as a 7th round pick from like 4 or 5 years ago in the upcoming season out of nowhere, like Cam Talbot, for instance. Just like guys who really, you have little to no expectations and they just fill the void. Yes, but Georgiev has really solidified himself for a couple years now as being one of the better goaltenders in the NHL. And to have him not even really as your main number one is highly impressive. And this tandem very well could be the biggest part in the Rangers possibly touching playoffs or, having a significant part in making playoffs this year. As we've stated already, a lot of things need to go right for them this year, but goaltending first and foremost needs to be relevant. It needs to be there. It needs to be strong. If they don't have consistency there, then you can expect little to nothing from everything else, even with them being high flying and high goal scoring. Like look at the Panthers, for instance, look at all these other teams. If you don't have great goaltending at the end of the day, you're only going to get so far.
Yeah, and having Georgiev there, it also creates this healthy competition. Mm-hmm. They have two goalies who are battling for a starting spot, whereas normally you would have a starting goalie who has nothing to prove in practice because he's going to be starting anyway. And having Georgiev as as an alternative in case Shesterkin is off to a rough start, I think it's a good strategy to have. And Shesterkin has been going through this his entire career. When he was in St. Petersburg, he was in a goalie tandem situation with Koskinen, who's now the Edmonton Oilers goaltender, and later Magnus Hellberg. For the Russian team, he was always battling it out with Ilya Sorokin, who I think a lot of fans are sleeping on when it comes to the Calder.
Yes, they are. They really are.
But speaking of the Calder, I think Shesterkin and Sorokin are candidates if none of the forwards produce.
And that's pushing it.
We all know Steve Mason won the Calder when he was a rookie, but that was mostly because there wasn't really a standout rookie forward or defenseman to go up against him. When Lundqvist played his rookie season, he went up against Alex Ovechkin and Sidney Crosby. There was no way he was going to win the Calder that year.
Absolutely.
But they have Carey Price, who had a stellar season the same year. The top goal scorer, Jamie Benn, had like 89 points or something. Mm-hmm. And in those seasons, if you have a stellar season as a goalie, then you can really stand out and you'll be in the conversation for a Calder or maybe even a Hart Trophy. So it depends on how guys like Lafreniere, Kaprizov do this season. But I think Lafreniere is our best bet to win a Calder.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I agree. I think Laffy is definitely the favorite between the two because goaltenders, just as you said, it's very rare to see them. Not that they can't, but a lot of things need to go in their favor far more than a guy of Lafreniere's situation, if you will. But I think we hit the nail on the head in regards to this roster. A lot of things to be excited about. So before I let you go here, let's just basically wrap this up by giving our predictions. What do we think is going to happen open night with the New York Islanders? What a fitting way to start the season. As we know, they play each other multiple times in a row. Not back to back, but that's how they have everything kind of set up. So that way it's less traveling, less often, that type of thing. So one, do you think Sorokin is going to play game one? I'm assuming it's going to be Varlamov, but I would really love to see that matchup from the get-go between those two friends.
I would love to see a Shesterkin-Sorokin matchup, but they might save that for later in the season. I think Varlamov's going to start for the Islanders. Shesterkin should start for the Rangers. I think the Rangers have a chance to win game one. I mean, it's the start of the season. Anything can happen. Yeah. Let's go with a wild prediction for first goal of the season.
Okay. All right. I feel like I should have a timer up so I don't have too much time to think here. Wild prediction. Well, let me put it this way. When I went to the Rangers home opener last year, I'm not sure if you were there either. Mark Stahl scored a wraparound goal to get things started. So
it's never happening again. That doesn't even happen in video games.
All right. Here's my wild prediction. The man filling Mark Stahl's spot, Jack Johnson. That is my bold prediction.
That is a wild prediction. I'm going to go with Julien Gauthier for the first goal of the season.
Oh, I like that. And might I add, this is unbelievably bold. I honestly hope this doesn't happen. So at least when it comes to Jack Johnson's point of view. So we'll see. I wouldn't mind whoever scores a goal. But like when Stahl scored a year ago, I remember that. I was like, you got to be joking. I was just laughing. I was very happy. I was hyped. I was like, all right, that's the one goal you're going to see from Mark Stahl this year. So enjoy it while it lasts.
If I could choose a player to score on opening night, it's easily Lafreniere. I want a player to score on his home debut. Always.
There's nothing that I would want more than to see Lafreniere have a possible better opening night debut than Matthews a couple years ago. Like, wouldn't that be something? You know?
Do you know the last Ranger to score on his NHL debut?
Don't tell me. Let me think for a second. I want to say there's been someone since Stepan.
Yeah, I've actually been two players since Stepan.
Okay. Could you tell me the year? Could you give me a hint?
2017-18 season.
Ooh, okay. 2017-2018 season Rangers. Oh boy. I'm stumped. Hit me. Who was it?
Elias Andersson.
Oh no, you're right. Oh, that's funny. Oh my. Those were the days.
And the other player since Stepan to score in his NHL debut for the Rangers was Vinny Lettieri.
Vinny, my man in Detroit. I remember.
I think never scored a goal after that again. But
I was such a Vinny Lettieri fan. Wishing him all the best in Anaheim now. I hope he has some type of role there. I'm not sure if he even made the roster cuts or not. I really liked him. He was just unfortunately a guy that really was never able to make that transition to the NHL level. Yeah,
I think he was on waiver, so he'll start on their taxi squad.
Okay. All right. Well, best of luck to Vinny. He was a fame story with the Rangers. It made sense, but it is what it is now. But all right. So I think we hit everything nail on the head. I'm really looking forward to night one.
I have one point to bring up before we wrap it up. If you don't mind.
Go ahead, Steven. Take the
floor. So K'Andre Miller made the team, and he was given number 79. Two things.
Don't ask me who the last number 79
I know.
is.
He's the first one to wear 79.
Okay,
so that's
all right.
I see people on Twitter saying, oh, he should pick a real number. I don't understand what people have against obscure numbers. To me, it's a lot of fun to see a player pick a new number and make it his. You know, number 79 can be his legacy for the Rangers.
Hey, you're exactly right.
Instead of going with number 4 or number 5 or number 6 and be the 29th player to wear that number, he decided to go with number 79. And I'm excited to see a new number being checked off the list. And I actually looked it up. Prior to 2012, only 2 numbers in the 70 range were used. There was 74 by Joel Bouchard and 77 by Phil Esposito. But since then, number 70, Mackenzie Skapski, 71, Mike Rupp, 72 Philip Hedel, 73 Brendan Perry, 75 Brendan Halverson, 76 Brady Shea, and now 79 Keandre Miller have been issued. So, and this is regular season only. Of course, I know some players have used obscure numbers in preseason, but that's not official. So.
Back to the days when I thought Brandon Peary would be the next big goal scoring machine for the Rangers, even better than Rick Nash. But that's a discussion for another day. And Mackenzie Skapski, I remember his shutout and I believe his first game in Buffalo. Felt like numerous times the Rangers had that happen. Maybe even with Halverson too. I could be wrong. But
and then Mike Rupp, who scored 2 goals in the Winter Classic.
And the Yager salute, nothing better. Yeah, no, that's great. But it'll be interesting if he can make his own legacy with 79. If he's interested in doing that, by all means, I'm here for it. And I would not mind getting a 79 jersey. Talk about being unique. I'm all for that. So, but all right. So I think we got everything, Steven. Thank you again. This was a lot of fun. I'm going to actually be Thursday night. I will be live streaming here on the channel, giving my reaction of all the highs and lows to the Rangers opening night. So that will be a lot of fun to see how that pans out. And then, as you guys know, we will be doing a roundup. So I'm assuming we might not be doing a roundup exactly when the week is done, because we'll probably, I would assume, as long as it's fine with you, maybe start the following week once we have a full week of hockey for the Rangers in, and then go from there. So we'll probably be doing a video either any day between Friday and Sunday, giving our roundup on the Rangers throughout the past week and all their games. So look forward to that, guys, here on Rangers Review. But thank you again, Steven. As always, let people know where they can find you, and then I'll get you out of here.
I'm basically just on Twitter, statboy_Steven. I post weird shit and basically prospect updates. I tweet a prospect schedule in the morning for all the prospects that are playing in college and in Europe, and usually in the nighttime I send a recap so everyone has an overview of what the prospects have done. Like kids like Nils Lundqvist, Zach Jones, Eric Ciccolini, Brad Berard.
All that great stuff. When you guys want prospect content, look no further than Steven. I'm sure we'll be talking about them plenty throughout this season, even with the Rangers games happening. There are bound to be things happening with the Rangers and the prospects throughout the year. So, again, thank you, Steven. Have a great night, and I'm looking forward to hopefully talking to you about a clean sweep for the Rangers a week from now.
Let's hope so.